Good morning and welcome to a special E3 edition of Chip Chat. And this one's a little bit off the cuff because I was talking to my guest this morning, which is Sully from GameCast.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
No worries. And we kind of had slightly different takeaways from Microsoft's E3 and we both made videos about it. And when we were talking on Discord yesterday, I think it was, we decided that we'd sit down and try and hash out how we had slightly different takeaways and what our common ground was and, you know, what the differences were. Hence, Sully is on with me this morning and we are going to try and hash it out. So before we get into that though, Sully, what have you been up to other than watching E3?
I mean, other than blowing up your Discord inbox immediately after receiving your comment on the YouTube video, not a whole lot. I'm sorry. I saw the opportunity to have an interesting chat, so I thought I wouldn't do the normal thing and just create a huge giant thread on the YouTube video, which probably would have been the smartest thing to do for YouTube traction reasons, but unfortunately I decided to blow up your inbox. So I apologize for blowing your ear up so late last night. But here we are for an interesting chat, hopefully. But what have I been up to? Well, I've been a little bit quiet on the YouTube scene recently. Mostly just been taking a break. You know what it's like, Joe. Sometimes you just got to tune out and take a bit of a break from YouTube because I think it can become that kind of unhealthy hobby at times if you lean into it too hard. So
yeah, definitely.
Just been trying to play some games. Actually signed up for Game Pass PC last night, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on in the episode, which I've actually had a few hiccups with. So that might be good to share as well.
Be interested to hear, yeah.
But other than that, I've been dabbling a lot in old Nintendo hardware and Game Boys. So,
yeah.
yeah, keep your eyes peeled for that on the Gamecast channel. I've got a lot of projects in the work in terms of Game Boys, Joe. So
you and me are very much the same on that one.
Yeah.
I'm always got projects on the go.
So my biggest issue with any kind of project is I jump in headfirst too fast. And I have quite a few projects that I'm trying to plan and map out rather than just jump headfirst into. Mostly specifically for recording reasons for the channel. Because I know you guys have been pestering me to like capture a lot of this stuff that I do tinker with. So I've been trying to do that, I guess, justice and I guess create the most polished product or version of a video that I can. So that's kind of left me in this weird stage, which I'm not used to, which is I currently have a table full of parts and bits and bobs that I'm trying to categorize and plan out videos for. So that's kind of where I'm at. And if that sounds interesting to you, check out the Gamecast channel because I'll be doing refurbish videos for Game Boys. I call them kind of saving a Game Boy. I buy a lot of broken ones from Japan, and I'm also going to be doing mods. So that'll be going up on the Gamecast channel, and I'm also putting together a separate space for that, another YouTube channel where I'll be housing the bulk of that because I don't want to completely bury the Gamecast channel in that kind of stuff. So that's what I've been up to, Joe. Sorry, that went a little bit longer than I thought it would.
Cool, no worries. And what I'll do is I'll put a link into Gamecast, so if anyone wants to look at that. And also on my last video, I actually mentioned that you've done stuff about, oh God, I've forgotten what it's called.
God, I don't even remember that. Are you talking about the Dragon Ball podcast?
That's it, Dragon Ball. Yeah, Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
So I've just mentioned your Dragon Ball stuff. So I've put links in on my previous video for the Dragon Ball stuff, and I will put links into general Gamecast. And if you give me your link to your channel for your Game Boy videos, I'll put a link into that as well. So
that would be great. Yeah, thank you. That space is more or less just awaiting content now. So like I said, I'm going to be trying to put the best of what I do on Gamecast because that's where it was originally meant to go, but there's going to be a heap of other stuff going up to yesterday's tech, which is what the new channel's called. So that'll be getting everything that's may not be great, but it's getting everything. So I'll try and remember to link you that one as well.
Well, it's good.
Joe,
you want to see warts and all as well sometimes because, you know, it's good to see that things go wrong sometimes because, you know, often things are a bit too slick.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so let's get to the meat of the video because, as I said before, you and I had slightly different takeaways from the Microsoft E3. And just to give a little bit of a background, you and I would say, probably come from fairly similar places as regards Xbox, in as much as we are both Xbox fans and we do like the Xbox platform. I still have an Xbox at the moment. In fact, I've got a bloody house full of the things. You don't.
I don't.
No, not
which
currently.
Is strange.
Yeah, which in some ways, I think you're more of an Xbox guy than I am, and yet I've got, like I say, a house full of Xboxes. But with the actual conference itself, I kind of was quite flat, and I actually made a video. The title of it was, how can this be so dull? And so my takeaway from it was kind of mixed. As I said to you before we started, I had some parts of it that I actually liked, and I think some of the things that they were talking about were interesting. But I just felt the whole of it didn't kind of mesh together. And I think, again, something that we discussed before we started was, in a way, there's two things going on there. There's one, there's the conference itself, and there's two, there's the actual content of the conference. In some ways, they're almost two different things. And how we approach that can affect what we think about it and what we're expecting in terms of, do we expect it to be a show? You said this. Is it a show, or is it a way of disseminating information? So I don't know. I had mixed feelings. As a show, I don't think it worked very well. I think a lot of the information they gave was good, but some of it I would have liked to hear more. And that's my kind of overview, if you like. But so what would your overview be on that? How?
See, I relatively agree with that overview. I think the issue at play here, and which is strange because I think it's a phenomenon that I think has maybe only been highlighted because Microsoft was the only show.
Funny. I thought that this morning, funny enough, actually, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I don't think there was anything wrong with the content that they brought to the show. I think that was all great. But I think it's the means in which it was presented. Like you said, it didn't work as a show. So then do we start talking about it being a show, a form of entertainment, or a conference, a means of gathering information about the Xbox brand for the next year between E3s? And for me, I don't know how to answer that question. I went into it with pretty high expectations, actually. The only real disappointment I did have was that we didn't get the grand Halo reveal that I thought we would get. But overall, in contrast to previous E3s, strictly Xbox shows at E3, I thought it was a really good show, especially in comparison to their previous shows, and perhaps the best show they've had this generation. And I personally feel like the issue is that it's the style in which they present everything. And I actually had a long... I'm sorry, Grant, I know I blew up your Twitter feed this afternoon because he shared something on Twitter and I just basically went just blah, 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 blah.
I'll have to look at that.
Yes, well, hopefully I present my thoughts better here. But I think it's the style in which Microsoft present their shows. It seems to be more of an advertisement for everything they have rather than a fleshing out of what they do have. And I think you can see the contrast between Sony and Microsoft in how they tackle their shows. To me personally, I find Sony conferences much the same that I think you found this one and what Grant found this one as well, which is a little bit dreary and dull. But when they're showing The Last of Us or another Naughty Dog title or God of War, the actual gameplay I find interesting, but I find everything else surrounding it rather dull.
Yeah.
So I completely understand the criticisms and arguments attached with the Microsoft show, but I think it's a preference in the style in which they're presenting what they have. I think that's the issue, not what they did present.
Yeah, I would agree with you for the most part on that. I think there's two things there. One, I think some of it was their own creation, the creation of hype, leading up to it. I think Phil Spencer said on several occasions they were going to go big, and And then at the beginning, he mentioned, streaming and a new console and stuff. So I was thinking at the first, 10 minutes or so of the conference, I was thinking, okay, this looks like I'm going to get what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But the other thing there was that there were a couple of things where I thought, and you touched on this just a minute ago, saying that it was kind of a way of putting things in front of people's faces almost. You didn't put it in that way, but that's kind of the takeaway from it that I got. But it was Microsoft have put it out there so that people know this stuff's coming. But for me, I thought when he said he was going to talk about streaming specifically, because I didn't have too many issues with the what they did with the new console. I would have liked a bit more detail, but I wasn't expecting too much on that because next year's going to be the year where we get the real detail. I saw someone saying that they were expecting maybe to get pricing on the console, and I wasn't expecting that at all. I think we'll get that all next year.
Exactly 6 months, a few months before we get the actual product.
Exactly, but with the streaming specifically, when he mentioned it at the beginning, and then they went on to talk about Game Pass, I thought that we would get more about the streaming, because when you mention something at the start of the conference and you kind of flag it up, you're kind of leading people to think that there's going to be something coming. And towards the end, when they covered the console and they'd done Game Pass, and we'll get to Game Pass in a minute because I think that was actually interesting. I think that they gave, certainly for me, that my expectations were raised somewhat even at the beginning of the conference, that we were going to hear some more about xCloud. And after what we got from Google, and I was really disappointed with what we got from Google, and I was expecting maybe Microsoft would come out and we'd hear something that would make Google look a bit sick and a bit flaccid. It was actually a bit of a disappointment because we didn't really get anything. That's the problem. We didn't get anything about streaming other than, we're doing a streaming service. And that was kind of all we got. Yeah. So that left me feeling a bit, well, why did you even mention it, really? Because
it's a case of we already knew what you just told us.
Yeah, exactly. So I would have wanted a bit more. It didn't have to be a huge amount, just a bit more, something that would make me think, okay, they've got, because we already knew there was stuff they didn't mention here that they told us beforehand, the numbers of games. There's supposed to be a lot of games already ready for, xCloud. So there was more before the conference than we actually got in the conference, and so that left me a little bit flat. And that was one area where I was specifically thinking it was a bit pointless in that area.
Yeah, so that was actually one of the nitpicks I actually had with the show in my video was xCloud. Very vague. It felt like just something they just had to reiterate that we already knew about. But at the same time, what's the point in talking about it if you're not actually going to talk about it? All they told us was that you can leverage the Xbox you already own, or you can leverage one of their Xboxes. And that is literally all they said about it.
And I when they said that about, using your Xbox to stream stuff to, like, I don't know, mobile phone or whatever, they didn't even go into any particular detail on that. I just assume that that's what they mean.
Yeah.
I was thinking that's I'm actually really interested in that. So give me something. Now tell me something about it. How's it going to work? And it was like...
Exactly. How's it going to work? And you don't need to give us the nitty-gritty, but you need to tell us, if I have a tablet or a Switch, how is that going to work when I'm outside of my house?
Yeah. They must know, surely. They must be...
Nintendo, for example, did a fantastic job of advertising the Nintendo Switch by actually showing people how the product was going to work in all its different shapes and sizes outside of the house and undocked.
Yeah.
So wouldn't have this been a perfect example or a case where Microsoft could have done something very similar, something that they envisioned for how xCloud would work? Like, again, we know Microsoft likes sizzle reels and advertisement. Couldn't this have been an opportunity to do that?
Yeah. And the problem there is that we've already seen them do, they had that brief thing where they showed someone playing on a phone and all the rest of it. So we've already seen that this stuff's out there and they're working on it. But they've also told us that we're going to get, betas of it actually in the wild this year. So I would have expected to have heard more at this stage. If you're going to be putting it out in people's hands later in the year, then you need to, give us some information. Make me want to get it. Please.
Yeah.
I'm an easy sell. I want to buy it. I want to try it out. So sell it to me.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. So, I mean, before we kind of shift into anything more regarding the conference, like, what would the speculation be as to why they didn't tell us anything? Because I honestly have been thinking about this, because this is really my only real big nitpick that I had with the show, other than being the common complaint with the show is that we didn't really get a whole lot of gameplay from their big IPs. But why did they not share anything regarding xCloud, especially if it's out later in the year?
Well, that's one of the reasons why I was kind of flat about it, because I couldn't actually get my head round why they wouldn't give us any more information. It wasn't like they were trying. They said they had a lot to cram in, and they I think some things went a little bit too fast. The idea Xbox stuff. You said in your video that I'm sorry, I can't give you the details because it all went too fast. And I think I said the same in my video. I was trying to write it down. I couldn't keep up. And I was watching it live,
I got through the first 3 and I gave up.
Yeah. And so okay, yeah, I understand they were trying to squeeze a lot of stuff in, but there were some things that were in there that I wasn't, and some of this is personal. Other people may have been interested, like, the Blair Witch thing I wasn't really bothered about. So there were things in there that I could have done without, and there were things in there that I wanted more of, and I think they needed to give us more of, as, the streaming thing. And I just, I cannot get my head round why they didn't give us more. And that was one of my problems. I still can't I'm still trying to process, why would you not, given the time frames involved? We're supposed to be getting, as I said, it this year. I just don't. Do you have any kind of idea why they wouldn't give us more? I just
not really. Beyond the thought of perhaps they just don't want to push that service too hard and fast to scare the consumer into like this all digital streaming future. I've said this before. Perhaps it's just them saying, "Hey, we got something. Yeah. If you want it, you can use it." And they're just going to softly transition into that. Like, they've been criticized before heavily and justly at the beginning of this generation for trying to shift the game too hard and fast. So maybe xCloud is them playing it soft and safe, and the people that are interested in it will just go seek it out.
That's actually a really good point, and that actually could be a reason for them from being a bit careful, because you're right, they did get burnt. And the irony there is that at the beginning of this generation, when they were talking about the all-digital future and all everything, everybody got up in arms about it, and look where we are now. We're pretty much there. So a lot of the stuff that they were vilified for is actually the reality now, and most people don't care. It's a bit like when everyone had a go at Kinect, and now they're all got Google thingy in their own,
Absolutely. And the funny thing is they're still pioneering, I believe, that space, but they're being very cautious with how they do it. And again, this is just conjecture. I could be completely wrong. Maybe they just weren't ready, and maybe they just couldn't show something, right? I could be completely wrong.
That's possible.
They could be well behind their time frame, and that's why they maybe cut it from the show last minute. I don't know. This is all just conjecture. But I think the same can almost be said for why we didn't get to see or hear more about the Scarlet as well. Because, again, I think Microsoft are blurring the lines quite a lot. They're kind of taking an eraser to what the traditional gaming space is and what a console generation means.
Yep.
So I think they are certainly being cautious, and I think the reason why they didn't drive home the Scarlet too hard was, one, it's probably a little bit too early, even though like you and I and a lot of other people we know would have absolutely frothed over more Scarlet's time for the show. I think they need to be careful, because you've released a new Xbox that was touted the world's most powerful box, and you've told people to go out and buy that only, 18 months to 2 years before now? So do you really want to be driving home the fact that you have a new one on the horizon and making a big kicking and screaming event about it? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that is difficult. And for me, one of the ways they could alleviate that would be to almost completely blur the console generation and say, well, the Xbox One X is still going to be able to run the new games, just not as well as the newer console or whatever. And we speculated about this before. I said I heard rumors that they might actually be looking to do that. But again, the reason why they wouldn't put that in the show and why they wouldn't talk more about the Scarlet and maybe, alleviate some of the issues people might have by saying, oh, well, the earlier consoles will still work and it's going to be more like a phone generation is, I think you're right there. I think it could be just fear that they are really wary about wanting to take, because Phil Spencer does this all the time. We've listened to our fans, we've listened to what people are talking, what they want and all the rest of it. And I think they might be wary about not taking the fans with them. I think you're right on that one.
Yeah.
But I think in a way that's made them a little bit too cautious as regards this,
I think it's them being smart enough to be somewhat cautious and to recognize that there is a fear from our perspective, or the average gamer's perspective, with what they are doing, which is, I think, relatively aggressive with what they're doing with all this hardware and all these different services. So I think it is them being cautious, yes, but I think what we've seen over probably the later half of this generation is consistent, safe forward motion from Microsoft in their messaging. So if you remember last E3, they said, we're working on a new Xbox. This E3, we got some details about that new Xbox. Yeah. Next E3, we'll get the next Xbox.
Yeah.
So they seem to be wanting to almost not drip feed it, but just steadily and slowly and cautiously continually feed us that information about what is happening with hardware and the future of Xbox. Because, like I said, I'll tie it back to the beginning of this generation. They don't want to slap their giant Microsoft schlongs in our face with this heavy-handed messaging and regarding what the future is going to be. They want to get there, but they've changed their approach in how they go about getting there, which I think is really wise. I think that's really smart. Like, I would have loved to have seen everything about the Scarlet, but I think it was wise.
I understand.
Of them to not.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, I'm done. I think it's just a smart move not to slap it around too much, like to pull that big Scarlet schlong again out on stage and basically just slap it in the face of the people that just bought the Xbox One X 12 months ago.
Yeah, I understand that. I just think, apart from anything else, some of the stuff they put out there was very, very similar to what Sony's already given us. When you actually get into the detail of it, the stuff about, SSD, happy about that.
Almost identical.
Want it to have an SSD. We knew that was coming, though. And this is the problem. I think everything that they told us, we already knew again. It wasn't anything surprising. There was nothing there that they gave us that was like, oh, wow, we already knew most of it. I'm trying to look at my notes here and see what I wrote about the new hardware. Yeah, it's just like, 4 times capability of the Xbox One X, which is pretty impressive if that's true, up to 120 frames per second. The one that really got me, and I had a go at Sony about this, so I'm going to have a go at Microsoft about it, is the 8K stuff. Like, come on, just leave it out, please. I don't want to hear that. There's things you can get me hyped about, but don't get me hyped about bloody 8K, because let's be honest, it's not going to do 8K for anything other than fucking Tetris or something,
Yeah, it's not going to be playing Gears of War 7 or 8 in 8K.
No.
Not a chance. Not even in 30 frames per second, likely. I'll eat my shorts if I'm wrong, but I highly doubt it.
I'll fucking eat your shorts if you're wrong.
Could you imagine next E3, Scarlet running Halo Infinity 8K, 60 frames per second?
Yeah.
Jesus. That would be something,
that would be amazing, but yeah.
Then I'll be wowed.
I'd definitely be wowed. But it's beyond what the hardware's capable of. It's beyond what current hardware can do at a price point. Mm-hmm. You could probably get, something to push out 8K, but you'd have to spend an awful lot of money to do it. I actually think if you look at the specs that we know so far of both the PS5 and the Xbox, whatever it's going to be called, Scarlet so far, I think they're both bloody impressive, and I can't wait for them. The problem I had with this here, that it didn't actually hype me up anymore. It didn't make me any more interested in it, and maybe that's because I'm like, well, I'm going to get it anyway. So maybe it is me coming to it with, you don't really need to tell me anymore at this stage. I know what we're going to get. We all do. We all pretty much know what the hardware's going to be.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just to quickly touch on the 8K thing again as well, I know Sony was very careful with the messaging saying supports 8K,
Yeah.
which will likely mean movie playback and all that kind of stuff, or photos,
Yeah.
or media, not gaming. I think that's the important thing to remember. It's highly unlikely to be gaming.
Yep.
And I'm assuming, I can't remember because I've watched the conference once, but I'm assuming Microsoft's messaging or wording was very similar with when they dropped that 8K buzzword.
Yeah, I believe so.
Support rather than playing in 8K.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm in the same boat as you, relatively. While it wasn't disappointing, I kind of have my opinions as to why we probably didn't get more. But it's like video games for me. I was blown away by Doom Eternal last year. This year, I don't really care about seeing more because I'm just ready to buy the game. And the same can be said for Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah.
You can show me X amount and I get to the point where I'm like, I'm already sold. I don't need to see any more. All I need is a release date.
Yeah.
And maybe a Keanu Reeves.
I mean, let's be honest. For me personally, when they said they were doing a sequel to the most recent Doom, it was pretty much sold already.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Let's be honest. The Doom we had was fantastic. It was a great game. So there wasn't a lot of selling they needed to do for people who were into that game. I actually sat my mate down to play it. He was a big fan of the original Doom. In fact, he was the guy who got me into original Doom, and I showed him the new Doom.
Oh, nice.
And he was like, yeah, not really interested. And I was like, are you insane?
Oh, really?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. He's like, oh, it doesn't feel like original Doom. I said, look, just because he was watching me play, I said, play it, and you will love it. It's so crisp. But yeah, wow. I couldn't get him into it. But he's a irascible old bastard anyway, so probably just being annoying for the sake of it. But no, it's such a great game, and they don't need to do a great deal with the new one. They just need to push it on a bit. Some more weapons, some more demons, some more scenarios, and just push it forward. And I can't see anyone who likes the first one not being happy with it. It was phenomenal.
Oh, absolutely.
And they'd have to drop the ball in a massive way to,
I was sold before they even showed me anything. It can be more of the same without any change, and I would buy it.
Yeah, me too. Sad bastards, aren't we?
Yeah, I know. Just a little fun fact, Joe, which we might be able to hop onto a different carriage in this train. But I'm looking at Game Pass on PC, my Xbox, the Windows app right now, and it's actually up to 104 games, whereas last night I was at 66. Yesterday, 66 after the show.
So they're adding them fast.
So we're 4 games over the 100 mark, though. Do you remember there anything being, or them stating anything about how many games would be available via PC Game Pass?
I seem to remember them just knocking out, because they do this with the Xbox Game Pass as well. Actually on the Xbox. They talk about 100 games, and I'm pretty certain there's more than 100 games on Game Pass for the Xbox at the moment as well. So okay. I think that's just a kind of ballpark figure,
Right. Yeah. See, I just thought the lock amount was a flat 100, but I'm obviously wrong because I've not actually used the console Game Pass before. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain. Actually, they're almost underselling themselves on this one, because I'm pretty certain it is more than 100. I'd need to go and count, I'd need to go and check, but I'm pretty certain it's more.
What I would actually like to know, Joe, which we probably should have done our research, but I would like to know how many of these titles between the PC Game Pass and the Xbox Game Pass cross over. Because if you invest in that ultimate subscription to get both versions of Game Pass, which I will be doing because I basically intend Game Pass to be the way I play my games mostly from now on.
Yeah.
Depending on that crossover, it already is incredible value for money in my opinion, but it could be astronomical value for money, because if there's not a lot of crossover between the two versions of Game Pass, you could be getting anywhere from 150 to 200 something titles for $15 USD a month.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I actually think it's phenomenal value for money, and I think it's really. This is one area of the conference that I was actually quite pleased about, and I, me, I already love Game Pass. I think Game Pass is phenomenal value for money. I think it's the best service out there currently, because you can download the games, and I know Sony have done that with some of the games now on PlayStation Now, but it's not all of them. Certainly the PlayStation 3 are only streamable. You can't download them. But moving forward, I can see me being the same way as you, and I'm pretty much there already. A lot of games I play on Game Pass. I don't bother buying them, especially the Microsoft first-party games. I don't buy them, certainly not straight away. I might, if I fancy having the physical copy, because I'm a bit stupid like that, sometimes I will buy the physical copy later on. But I will invariably play the game initially on Game Pass. And I think it's, you add in Game Pass PC, yes, sign me up, as long as it's reasonable value. And if you look at the value, you say it's like 15, I think it's about 15 quid a month, something like that. I need to check the figures again, but
I think it's $14.99 USD, and for me in Australia, they just calculated at being 15 AUD. So I imagine your pricing would be probably roughly half that. I'd imagine.
Well, yeah, I given that it's $9.99 for the Xbox One. And it's like $7.99 for the Xbox One in the UK. It's probably going to work out at something like 12 quid or something in the UK.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you work it out like that, that's Game Pass, Xbox and PC for 12 quid a month. And you can get deals as well. I got it for a year for half price,
Wow.
And there will be deals. And that, you incorporate in... Xbox Live with that as well, and you can get deals all across the board, and it works out a lot cheaper. That is a phenomenal deal when you consider that PlayStation Now is $12.99 a month UK. Actually no, I think it's more than that, $13.99 a month, something like that. It's considerably more expensive than the Xbox offering anyway, put it that way.
Yeah.
So I just think at the moment it's phenomenal value for money, and I've got no issues really with what they said about Game Pass, and the extra games that will come in, and all the new games that are coming, and a lot more third-party games coming now. We've got Metro Exodus has come to Game Pass, hasn't it? Or it is coming to Game Pass.
Yep, already on here.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, I can't fault Game Pass. I've got nothing but good things to say about Game Pass. It's brilliant. So yeah, that's one of the things in there that I was happy about. In a way, I was almost like, you could almost make more of this.
They honestly did undersell a little bit, didn't they? Yeah. It's like Game Pass is on PC. Everyone's like, cool, let's go get it.
Yeah. And I mean, going back to the difference between what was on offer and how it was offered, that was one of the things for me. It was like, sometimes Microsoft are guilty of massive hyperbole, and I think that it was almost two things going on here. In some cases, they were almost being, true to form and engaging in massive hyperbole, and then in other areas they were like, "Oh, here you go." So
yeah,
it was a bit kind of I couldn't really make up my mind what they were going for. And that was the thing. I think tonally it was a bit all over the place.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'll definitely agree with that, and I understand the criticism. I think the only difference is between us is I walked away content still, which I think is the big difference.
Yeah. I as I say, I wanted to hear more about streaming, and the thing is, you have to be careful here because I don't want to project what I want. I had a guy come into my Discord and going on about Microsoft should produce a portable game control, games machine.
I remember that. Spoke to that guy.
Yeah, and it was like, he was insistent that it was going to happen, and it's like, no, what you're doing is you're projecting what you want and trying to make that a reality by kind of engaging in this fantasy almost.
Yeah, what's it called? Reverse. God, there's an actual terminology for it where you reach your own conclusion in your head and you rationalize it by walking back to where you think it should start coming to fruition.
Yeah.
That's kind of what he did.
Yeah, exactly. And so I want to be careful not to do that here because I wanted to hear more about the streaming service, and I thought they should have given us more about the streaming service. But at the same time, should I be disappointed about things they didn't tell us? They didn't tell us they were going to be landing on Mars either. So should I be? Do you know what I mean? So yeah. We were talking about this before. You have to be careful about your expectations because on the one hand, you can build yourself up and expect too much, and then the flip side of that can be that you then get disappointed when you shouldn't be disappointed because it's not their fault. It's you. It's all happened in your own head rather than rather than actually what went on there. So I'm very aware of the fact that I may be bringing my own preconceptions with me, if you see what I mean. And so...
Yeah. And you see, again, I'm a polar opposite to you because, again, I left the show feeling very content and happy with what I did see, yet I think I went in with unrealistic expectations and hype.
Yeah.
So the fact that I didn't leave disappointed is a little bit confusing to myself.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what's happened. Maybe there's something wrong with me.
Well, maybe there's something wrong with me, because Dawn actually said to me, well, you were getting quite excited when it was on. I was like, yeah, well, there was a couple of bits that I did get excited about. You know, Game Pass, we talked about already.
Yep.
Keanu Reeves. Who didn't like Keanu Reeves? If anyone doesn't like...
Oh, yeah, I mean, what's not to like, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think I said in my video, you know, he's not got the greatest range as an actor in the world, but he's got that sort of undefinable star quality, you know, that you're not quite sure...
Genuine character, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And so the minute he comes onto anything, things brighten up, you know. The problem there for me, though, was that with Keanu Reeves coming on, he was such a sort of bright light in the whole thing that it kind of did put the other rest of it in sort of stark relief. It was like, you know, because the reality is he is very good at presenting. He's a trained actor. He's not some corporate person who has to do this once a year and struggles with it. I mean, I know a few people who work in business where they have to do presentations every so often and they're not exactly happy about doing it. So, you know.
Yeah. No, he did really well. And I mean, there's always been that little dash of stardom that a lot of conferences have tried to roll in the past, especially Microsoft. They like to throw a little bit of stardom in and get a little bit funky, like with the Lego car and the Gears of War Underground section, which was pretty cool. But again, none of that's really important. Like, I understand that it ties into the idea of it being entertainment and a show, and I guess a lot of that didn't connect with people. I found it cool and interesting and fun. But again, to me, I was more there just to gather my dot points and information and to hopefully see Halo. Yeah. Which again, I guess that's where I differ is like in my head, I had a lot of expectations and dot points that I wanted to cover. And I felt like most of them did get covered, even though I would have liked to have seen more. But I think this year for Microsoft, I don't know, we're probably beating a dead horse at the moment, but I think their approach is to be an advertisement with their E3. You know, to keep the runtime respectable, to put out all their cards in view of the public, with the exclusion, obviously, of xCloud. They kind of just mentioned it was a thing. And I think the reason why we didn't get any huge, large slices of gameplay was probably because they didn't want to have a 2.5 hour or 3 hour show. They wanted to show a little bit of everything they had, gaming-wise. Yeah. Because they did, and again, I know, look, a lot of it wasn't exclusive, but we did get to see a lot of the titles from the studios, little snippets of the stuff that the studios that they had recently acquired were working on. So we did see what the titles were and kind of where they're going with these titles with the recent acquisitions of these studios.
Outer Worlds, Bleeding Edge.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was the George R.R. Martin one as well. I think was that from FromSoft that was working on, perhaps. Yeah. There was very little on that, was there? Because it almost passed me by initially, and then I thought, oh, that's George Martin's. That's the one that I've been hearing about. Yeah, so. Yeah, I wish I'd kept my bloody list now. I deleted it the other day. I had all the games bloody recorded down, but they did show and bring to the stage a lot of bloody games, and they did premiere a lot of games. And yes, I know a lot of them are appearing on other platforms. Perfect example, Minecraft Dungeons. They had a little gag at the end of Minecraft Dungeons where the guy would hit the bottom of the screen and it would keep revealing what platforms it was releasing on. I missed that, actually. That's the case in... Yeah. So it originally, the end card flashed up and it just said Xbox. Then you hit it and then it said, PC and Game Pass. And then you hit it again and it came up with PlayStation and Nintendo Switch. Oh, nice. That was a nice little touch then, yeah. I think that's what they are now. That's what they do. They're not... And I've said this 100 times before, and I understand if you're upset that there's no exclusives for the box that you want to have an incentive to buy. I understand that. For me personally, it's not about so much the boxes anymore. It's about the services and Game Pass as a package. And for me, Game Pass on console just happens to be why I'll probably get the Xbox, that and Halo. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit sidetracked. No, a little side note. But I think that's what they are now. They're not necessarily about, locking themselves into saying, hey, look at all our exclusives. I think it's cool that they can show a property that they own, Minecraft, a huge property, and say, we made this new game and it's coming to the PlayStation and Nintendo Switch.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
And it looks like an awesome game. Why wouldn't anybody love that? Why the fuck are you angry that that's not a fucking exclusive?
Yeah, I think I think that people getting angry about that are ridiculous. I said this on my, I can't remember, one of the videos I made. I said that it was talking about when Sony went in with Microsoft to use the Azure servers, and I said at the time that I could see a time where Microsoft games were going to be on all platforms. So we could get into a situation where Microsoft games are on PlayStation, and we could actually end up in a situation where we could see Microsoft games being on PlayStation Now. I could actually see that happening.
Yeah.
Which would be really interesting, because we'd end up in a situation where you've got an Xbox game on a Microsoft game on a Sony platform running on Microsoft servers. So
yeah, and I think this traditional purebred brand kind of religion, like when people fall in love with plastic, I think they're the people getting angry that Microsoft didn't have a show that was just filled with exclusives, like a Sony show, right? And look, I understand if you own an Xbox and you bought it at the start of the generation and the exclusives just haven't come for you, I get that. But somebody looking at it now who maybe is just thinking about buying the next generation, I don't think you should be getting angry about that. I think you should be happy that they are still working on exclusives, FYI. Like I said, they acquired all those studios, so they will come, and we did see some of that. But I don't think that should be the point that we're driving home, that we're not happy about with regards to this showing, which seems to be the point that I did see this year, and of course in previous years, which I think was warranted because they just didn't have games bar third-party games. But I think this year they did bring quite a lot that they did own, and also showed stuff like Minecraft Dungeons, which is coming to every platform. But we seem to be stuck on this point of, oh yeah, but how much of that's exclusive?
And the thing is,
why does that matter?
Something like Minecraft Dungeons will probably make them a boatload of cash. And at the end of the day, that's really what they're in this for anyway. And of course, they want to keep people happy. I do have a slightly different skew to you as regards the exclusives, in the sense that I think for me, I would have liked to have seen something more there. I would. I mean, I'm not. You know me. I'm not one of these who's my view is very much in line with yours on the whole Microsoft thing. But I would have liked to maybe have seen something about Fable. Maybe again though. Maybe they're not ready. Maybe it's not ready yet. And showing
was that? Sorry, Joe. Was that a rumor or a leak or an incorrect leak or rumor? Because I was kind of confused by that as well, because I thought we were going to see Fable. I thought that was one of the leaks. Yeah,
I really did. I thought we were going to see something about Fable, and maybe it was a leak, and perhaps, sorry, maybe it was just a rumor that was unfounded. I don't know. I'd need to go back and check that. But I'm not even a huge Fable fan. I just thought that it would. I got a mate who's a massive Fable fan, loves the Fable games, but I'm not into that kind of gameplay really in a big way. I'd probably still buy it, but I just think from a point of view of Microsoft having their own established IPs, Fable obviously is one that we know is coming. I perhaps would have liked to have seen something about that, and maybe I don't know. Part of me wanted to see them announce, even if it was just a very brief thing like they did with Halo the last year. Something for either a new IP or an old IP that they were resurrecting, because there's been rumours going around, and this is the problem though. Some of it, we're going back to expectations again. There's been rumours around for a while now about certain games being resurrected, and then last year we didn't really get anything, and this year we haven't got anything. So maybe we need to be a bit more careful about the rumour mill, but. I was thinking maybe they would bring some surprises, because there weren't really. That's the other thing for me. there weren't any real surprises.
No, there wasn't.
And I think when you do a show like this, you need at least one or maybe two surprises. Something that's going to make people go, "Oh wow," you know. And
well, people want the 1, 2, 3 punch, don't they? Which we didn't get. We got what we expected, which wasn't necessarily bad.
No, I don't think what they actually gave us was bad. And I think when people look back on it, they'll think actually what they showed us wasn't at all as bad as some people are saying. I just feel that well, again, it goes back to that split between what you deliver and how you deliver it. I think, Keanu Reeves showed us that things can be brighter and punchier and more exciting. And the content, while what we got was okay, there were some things that were omitted that maybe should have been there if you wanted to get people more excited.
Yeah, definitely. No, I completely agree. Like, I mean, they probably should have shown an actual gameplay slice of Gears of War 5, which I'm still scratching my head as to why they wouldn't. Like, just 3 minutes, 3 minutes of gameplay. It doesn't have to be a 20-minute reveal like a Naughty Dog showing.
It's weird, isn't it? Because they're actually closer to release this year than they were last year, and yet I thought what they showed us last year was much more exciting than what they showed us this year, which is not good. It's the wrong direction.
In-game cutscenes. Exactly. Whereas this year we got a bit of a gameplay mode reveal, but in almost like an advertisement trailer form, which seemed, I absolutely admit it seemed bizarre. But again, like, just to kind of reiterate, like, I completely get the criticism. I think it's not going to hurt Microsoft to have exclusives, and I would love exclusives. I would love the more reasons you give me to sign up to Game Pass and to keep my subscription, the better. The more reasons you give people to go out and buy the new plastic, the better. My only point is, I just don't think we should be worried or just harping on about the fact that what they did have wasn't enough, because I thought they did have. I think they did have enough. I think they had quite a few bits and pieces that were exclusive to them. I think it was something like 10-ish or 12 exclusives. 14.
I don't think some of that was, and this is one of the things I have an issue with, is some 14 exclusives. I'm not sure that was actually 14 exclusives that they were announcing this time round. It's like, I think some of that you can add in, like, the Lego add-on for Forza. And so do you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Microsoft do play a bit fast and loose with that sometimes. You get a bit of smoke and mirrors or a bait and switch. It's 14 exclusives, but having
exclusive content.
Yeah, State of Decay 2 add-on pack is not really what people think of when you think of exclusives. So I'm a bit wary when they do that. And I think the problem there is, I think what you do is when you talk about stuff like that at the beginning, like you did, 60 games, I think it was 60 games, 14 exclusives, 30 on Game Pass. And then when you actually come to doing it...
30 premieres, I think. Yep. I think it was, 60 games, 30 premiering titles, and 14 exclusives, I think they said.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. But you need to be really careful if you start the show, like I said, with the streaming... You mention it, and then what you deliver is less than you promise. You need to be, I think, and I think the problem there was not so much for me at the beginning when Phil Spencer came on and he was talking about this. I was like, fine, and then for me, what they delivered was sort of less than what they were promising. Does that make sense? And
yeah, that makes sense.
For me, though, one of the things that you're talking about, people getting up in arms about exclusives and stuff, and one thing that I did find really odd, and this was going on before the conference as well, because we had the leak, and this is Ninja Theory, their game Bleeding Edge. I don't really understand the backlash for that, because people want exclusives on the Xbox. Okay, they delivered Hellblade, which is a fantastic game, story-based game and everything. And again, it comes down to me is like, well, people thought because they delivered Hellblade, they were going to deliver what? Hellblade 2 or another game of a similar type? It's like when a band produces an album and then everyone wants them to produce the same bloody album every time. And when they come out with something, in a different genre or a different style or where people get up in arms or upset. It's like Dylan when he went electric. It's like, hold on a minute. They've made this game. We've seen a little bit about it. It's probably not my kind of thing, but give them a chance. It might be a good game,
Absolutely. I don't disagree. Don't disagree at all. And again, I just don't understand. I understand why people want exclusives. I completely understand that. I get that. I get that 100%. The desire to have something unique, right? Especially for a platform that you already own. I completely get that. What I don't get is kind of this pitchfork mentality of like, oh, well, Microsoft's lost all the exclusives because it's going to PC and Game Pass. Like, it's like this refusal to embrace something that is actually still good. Especially if you don't already own it and you want to get into it. Like, they've made it really easy to get into. I don't understand that. And like a game like Minecraft Dungeons, which is getting shared around, it's to PlayStation, for Christ's sake, and the Switch. Like, I think that's excellent for gamers. And again, I think they did bring a lot that they are working on. It would have been great to have seen more, but I think they did show a lot of like, hey, well, this is what our first-party studios are working on. But here's the next point. When we start talking about exclusives, are people upset because they're not Sony-esque exclusives? They're not the Naughty Dog title equivalent.
I think that's a really, really good point because, I've thought this for a while now, that people seem to want Microsoft. There's one guy, I can't forget his name, one of the YouTubers who went from being an Xbox guy to being a PlayStation guy. And he's getting really annoyed because he's like, well, I moved to PlayStation because we've got these story-based games and we've got Horizon Zero Dawn and we've got God of War and blah and blah and so on and so forth. And we
Great games,
I'm not going to argue with that at all. I think Sony's first-party content is terrific. And they are great games. But if you look at a lot of the Sony first-party exclusives, they are, of a particular type for a lot, for the most part. And if you look at things like racing games, Microsoft got better racing games than the PlayStation. That's probably the only area where they got better games than the PlayStation, if we're being honest. But I just think that, Microsoft may be going in another direction. It may not be the direction that I'm so keen on because I do prefer story-based games. But it's this thing about judging something for what it's not. It's like when somebody makes a war movie and someone has a go at it for not being a musical or something. It's I can understand if you've got a criticism for Microsoft for, say putting out State of Decay 2 and it's not as good as people were hoping. That's fair criticism. But if you put out State of Decay 2 and people criticize it for not being God of War, then I've got an issue with it.
Well, I mean, I think Sony, I think you'd be crazy not to desire Sony exclusives on the platform you own if it's not a PlayStation console, because I think they're phenomenal games. But again, to burn the titles, at the cross that are Microsoft titles because they're not those games is insane. What I think is going to end up happening is I think we'll likely probably never anytime soon see a Microsoft game that is of the same caliber of writing and a narrative-driven title that you would find on PlayStation. But I do think we're going to see a large variety and contrast between their exclusives, because a lot of the Sony games, like you said, are very heavy narrative-driven games, which is nothing wrong with that.
No, it's my favourite type of game, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think that's something you can just buy studios make happen at the snap of a finger. And maybe Microsoft should already be doing it. I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. Maybe they should have sorted this all out years ago. Maybe they should already be doing narrative-driven titles like Sony. But, I honestly think that's what people want, but the Microsoft or Xbox version. And that's clearly not the case. We didn't get the next Hellblade, fully blown out Bloodborne-esque experience, right? Which, Sony got. We're not getting that. And when you look at their big pillar franchises being Halo 5, the upcoming titles, Halo 5 and Halo 6, I highly doubt the writing will be on the same level that a Naughty Dog title will be.
This is like, well, how many studios out there are producing stuff on the level of Naughty Dog? Let's be honest.
Three? Three, maybe? Like, you can count them on 3 fingers, 4 fingers, 5 fingers. Pick a hand, you can count them on there, right? Sony are in a really, really good position, and they have got a couple of pedigree studios under their belt. And credit where credit is due. Good on them for making that happen and put it together and acquiring the talent to produce these games. Good on them, absolutely. And I'll be very surprised if Microsoft aren't trying to eventually replicate something like that. But that's not currently the case. And I think they do get... I think that is what people want when they kind of say, well, Microsoft's got no exclusives. I'm like, well, they kind of do, but it's not necessarily what you want or what you're looking at on the PlayStation.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a difficult one for me because I look at it and I think, well, I would like to see some more. I mean, to be honest, actually, for me, I'd like to see more kind of linear based shooters that aren't online. That aren't kind of. But let's be honest, that ain't going to happen because that's not where the world is now. Shooters tend to be online. No. They tend to be like, you're running guns and you get the odd thing like Doom coming along, which is, a story based of sorts and isn't online. And you get Wolfenstein and stuff like this. But how many people are making those sorts of games now? Those games only seem to really be coming out of Bethesda at the moment. So my favourite...
The single player
Yeah, my favourite sort of game, the single player shooter... is an extremely niche market now, and most people, if they're buying a shooter, if it hasn't got an online component, an awful lot of people won't even bother buying it, which I find is extremely sad from my perspective because they're my favourite games. But what can you do? You can't make the world fit your own idea unless you're bloody the guy running the Matrix or whatever. Maybe you could then, but. The rest of us just have to kind of accept that the world may not conform to what we want it to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, can you see Microsoft ever attaining their own version of Naughty Dog or Santa Monica? Is that something you can see next generation? Can they have you heard the new term quadruple A games? Because that's what I'd call Sony exclusives. They're fucking phenomenal.
Yeah,
they're quadruple A games if I've ever seen them. That was the term coined. I'm
not sure who coined it, but that was the term coined for the coalition, wasn't it? They're going to be making that to me, that's like, well, until we actually see something from them, I'm going to reserve judgment because they might produce some phenomenal story-based thing. They might produce something that's just an online shooter. They might do something completely different. Who knows? They might decide that they're going to, Microsoft are going to put out a VR headset and they're going to make a VR game. Who knows? They've not actually shown us anything yet, so we have no clue what they're going to be making. Not a clue.
So, I mean, like, is it that pedigree, or is it the narrative-driven games, or is it both that kind of distinguish those Sony games from what Microsoft definitely doesn't have at the moment? I don't think. I think they've got exclusives. I think they've got a lot of contrasting variety between their exclusives. But is that something that you think they will attain... exclusive wise next generation? Do you think will they get their Naughty Dog?
Naughty Dog? I think they'd be hard pushed to do that. I mean, there are obviously going to be studios out there that either are capable of producing something similar or are capable of, upping their game to produce something similar. But the other thing
or is it kind of like lightning in a bottle? You can't manufacture it. It has to just organically happen.
What happens if I can't see it happening, but it might? What happens if The Last of Us 2 comes out and it's not that great? Yeah, because it could happen. I mean, the reality is that I've seen this time and time again, where you've got a writer or you've got a TV production company that are producing fantastic TV programs or fantastic books, or maybe a great series of films, and then they have a misstep, and. People are very heavy to jump on. Oh, they're not doing, and if they do something that isn't quite what people were expecting, again, it's this Ninja Theory thing again. Look what happened with Ninja Theory. They haven't produced Hellblade 2, so all of a sudden everybody's up in arms, and it's Microsoft's fault because they bought them. Well, this game and several others were already in development before Microsoft bought them. Maybe Microsoft bought them because they saw Bleeding Edge and they thought that might be a good fit, but Ninja Theory were already working on that, and as I said before, we need to give them a chance. The game might be rubbish, it might be great, who knows?
And if anything, I think that's a sign of health from the Microsoft studios, and all the studios that have just been bought is because I'm sure Microsoft and Phil Spencer probably wanted them to make their version of Hellblade for the Xbox, right? Like, I'm sure they want some of those studios to make, the next Last of Us. But the fact that they seem to be making what they want, I think is good. Creative freedom, right?
This is something, and I'm hoping this is a sign of a culture change at Microsoft, because I think one of the problems is historical with Microsoft, and one of the reasons they've struggled with games is because I think they've been too heavy-handed with their studios. I mean, if you look what happened with Scalebound, there was all sorts of... I don't know whether that was Microsoft's end or the developers' end, but there was obviously problems with the production of that. We had the Quantum Break developer, I forget their name off the top of my head, they decided they didn't want to be second-party studio, something. Wasn't it? Because they weren't owned by Microsoft, but they were published by Microsoft. They decided they wanted to become a complete, full third-party developer, and now they're doing Control, which I think is interesting. They called it Control because they've got Control now. So maybe this is a sign of a culture change at Microsoft, and for better or worse, I think that's what they should be doing. They should let, I said this for years with TV. If you look at HBO, the reason HBO did so well for so long was because they were the suits were hands off and they let the talent do what they were good at.
Yeah, definitely. I 100% agree with that. And I suspect it has probably been shifting for some time now into a more healthy realm. But I mean, you just have to look at Bungie and why Bungie wanted to leave. They didn't want to make Halo anymore, so they had to leave.
Yeah,
that's insane that a studio has to leave because they don't want to make a game anymore. Like, for fuck's sakes, let them make your Destiny.
Yeah, exactly.
And you missed out, Microsoft.
I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, the studio. I've always said this. It doesn't matter what the area is, what work it is, whether it's games, films, whether it's just working, for a company that picks up rubbish or whatever. You hire good people and then you let them do their best work. And you step in if things start to go wrong. You have to keep an overview on it. You have to keep an eye on it. You don't want to let things get out of control. You don't want the budget going crazy and not producing things, like under EA with what's the studio? The I can't remember the name of them. The guys who just produced Anthem.
Visceral? Oh, Anthem. Oh, God, Bioshock.
Bioshock. Yeah.
Visceral is the one they shut down, I think.
Yeah, and that from what you hear there, it was just completely out of control. So you do need an overview. You do need the suits do need to pay attention, but their wheelhouse isn't creativity. So you let the creative people do their thing. And just keep an eye on them and make sure they're not overspending, make sure they're not hiring too many people, all that usual stuff, the kind of everyday running of the thing. Yeah, you need to keep an eye on. But you can't have suits going in and telling games company, developers what they're going to make, because that's an artistic process. It's like, what you're going to have people coming in and the publishers coming in and sitting on the behind a writer while he's writing. Oh no, I don't like that character. Get rid of that character. Do another. It's bollocks. You're not going to produce decent quality art doing that. That's complete and utter crap. So
I agree. 100% agree.
Sorry, I got on a bit of a rant there, but
no, I completely understand. I completely agree, and I suspect that is currently not the case. I certainly think it probably was at the beginning of the generation, and probably even last generation, and has been for some time before, probably in immediate recent times. But I suspect a lot of stuff like that kind of went out the window when Phil took over, when we started to see all these radical shifts in strategy and all that kind of stuff. God, I forgot where I was going now. I'm going to talk about something gaming related. I got swept away. You swept me away, Joe, with that one.
Not often people say that about me.
Completely eradicated my train of thought on somewhere I was going next. It'll come back to me, I'm sure.
Okay. So, we've kind of gone off at a tangent and all the rest of it. And the thing for me, that there were some positives, I think, from this. I got, as I say, Keanu Reeves coming on stage. I got no problem with that. I thought that was really good. I think the Cyberpunk developer CD Projekt I think that at the moment they can kind of do no wrong. I think they're going great guns with that. I think everything they do, it looks fantastic. Bringing Keanu Reeves in is just like, sticking that cherry on the top of the cake.
Yeah.
So that was a real high point for me. Obviously, not an exclusive, but I think it's Microsoft got marketing with that, obviously, because it always appears on their stage. So they got the marketing with that one. That was a real positive for me. I thought the Game Pass stuff was great. I love Game Pass, and I've got no issues with that at all. The controller, that for me was a
I thought that was interesting.
I think the Elite controller is probably the best controller I've ever held in my hand, and I think that this one's just going to be a better version. I think Microsoft do that side. Microsoft do that side of things really well. I think at the moment, since Phil Spencer took over, whether it's him, I don't know, but certainly someone there's getting it right. They've had a misstep with the sad edition of the Xbox One. I think they messed that up royally.
Yeah.
But other than that, hardware-wise, they've been doing great things. And as much as I would have liked to have seen more about Scarlet, and we were expecting 2 SKUs of Scarlet, weren't we? We were expecting Anaconda and Lockhart.
Yeah, Anaconda and Scarlet. Lockhart. Sorry, yeah. Which was interesting. So I'm not sure what that was about with that rumor. Obviously, that was incorrect, I'm assuming. I mean, because one of them was meant to be the base Xbox, right? The new base. And one of them would be the Powerhouse. So we got the Powerhouse, but does that lead us to believe that now the Xbox One X is just the new base?
Interesting, isn't it? It makes you speculate, maybe they're having a rethink because of how the Xbox One S all digital was received. But I don't think so. I think
maybe that's what it was all about.
To be honest, I think that we'll probably still get 2 SKUs, and I think we'll hear about that next year.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything too much to
enough.
take home from that. I think that they were just playing it close to the chest. I think they wanted to give us some specs that were on a par with what PlayStation are offering us, and not be have people go, well, where was their hardware? I think they had to give us something.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's kind of pointless. Just to go kind of look at the future a little bit further. I believe it's a little bit pointless having 2 SKUs when you've got the Xbox One X just sitting there. Which is still incredibly capable. Yeah. Why can't that just be the Lockhart? And then just
this is interesting because some of the rumors that have been going around and some of the tech specs that have been going around suggest that in some respects, certainly graphically, the Lockhart is less powerful than the X. And
so, what's the point? Is it something to do with the CPU and them needing to swap out a certain aspect of the hardware? Because I know the CPU is a huge limiting factor for the Xbox this generation. So they trying to move away from the limitation, but still offers something comparable and affordable? I don't know.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
To me, I think the whole Lockhart thing doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But, maybe if they offer it at a really low price point, perhaps they could do that. But why not just, I don't know, what I don't understand why you would make any console that was in any way, shape or form less powerful than the current console. And maybe there's something they know that we don't, and there's something that will compensate for the raw power of the graphics or something. I don't know. But,
Yeah, and I mean, I know generations is a dirty word now, but technically you would be putting one of your consoles from your new generation between the middle of the 2 consoles from your last generation, which is really a head scratcher. That's really going to confuse people a lot if they do that.
So, maybe they have had a rethink, maybe, who knows? I think we might find more out about that later in the year. I think we might even still get more from Microsoft later in the year, but definitely next year, next E3, I think we'll know.
Yeah, absolutely. Just quickly before you wrap it up though, Joe, did Halo do anything for you? Did you have any thoughts or opinions on that?
Not a great deal, I have to say. It didn't. It was good to see Master Chief front and center. I don't have any real issues with the trailer. I thought it was fine. I was going to say I would have liked to have seen a little bit more. I would have liked to have seen some gameplay, perhaps. It didn't have to be a lot. Just actually, let's see some gameplay. They could, in the trailer that they showed us at the end, which was quite long, they could have edited that a bit more and add a little bit of gameplay in there, perhaps.
Yeah, I was going to say I thought it was quite interesting actually, because as you know, I follow Halo quite closely and definitely have my fair share of criticism towards 4 and 5 in different aspects of those games. 5 I did not enjoy, 4 I enjoyed, but both games I think were received with mixed reception. I think it was warranted, absolutely, and they botched the Master Chief Collection originally, which wasn't entirely 343's fault. There were a lot of hands in that pie. But I think it's interesting that for this Halo, it's launching day and date with Scarlet, I believe, next holidays. So I think that's a nice return to something cool and reminiscent of the original Xbox and Halo.
Yeah, you said that in your video, and I think you're absolutely right there. I think that's a perfect nod, and it's a
nice little bit of DNA.
It
callback.
gives them some marketing opportunities there as well to play on the sort of nostalgia of it. We've got a new console coming with Halo, which is obviously the marquee title for the original console. And you cannot underestimate how big that was when they first released the original Xbox. That was huge.
Oh, absolutely. It redefined a lot of things, yeah. And this Halo specifically, I think, is going to be... I feel like it's all coming together in terms of Halo and how they're trying to line it up with the Scarlet, because the criticism that 343 received for Halo has kind of pulled them back to the drawing board, and that drawing board seems to be them wanting to harness what originally made Halo special. And in that trailer, there were a lot of callbacks to the original trilogy specifically, whereas in recent entries, 343 has, I wouldn't say necessarily misfired for me personally, because I've enjoyed a lot of the aesthetics that they've kind of brought to Halo and pushed it forward into a more modern time, but I completely also understand the criticism, how some people didn't enjoy that at all. And I think it was very much on display that they get it. They get it, and they're trying to reharness what is Halo. And the Master Chief had a complete color swap and armor swap, and they had music present in that trailer from the original trilogy. And it seems to all be set on a ring world as well.
Sound effects as well. There were some nice little cues in there. I did like that, yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that they also, this Halo, by the time it launches, has spent an extra 2 years in development, and it's also going to be running on a brand new engine that's likely built for the Scarlet. I think we're going to be in for something special, I hope. So that trailer did give me hope for Halo, at least.
I have my concerns. I love the idea they're going to release it as... And it will be a packing game as well. It won't be, in the sense that it will just be packed in all versions. You'll be able to get a version without it, I would imagine. I'm only speculating, obviously. But you'll be able to buy a bundle with Halo day one. If they don't do that, I will... I'll eat your shorts.
You'll eat my shorts. And I mean, I think this is why we didn't see it, though, Joe. This is the one excuse I'll make for any game as to why it wasn't shown. And I think they specifically did not show Halo because they're saving it for the Scarlet reveal. This is the engine that's been built for the Scarlet. This is the game they've spent an extra 2 years on, and I think they want to reveal it on Scarlet.
And I actually did say there was an aspect of the conference for me that felt like there were parts of it where they were treading water because they didn't want to give us too much. I think you're right there. I do have my reservations. The title worries me, Halo Infinite. I hope it's not going to be put out there as a service.
I would eat my shorts again if it is, because all the amount they've blabbed on about harnessing what makes the originals so special, I'd be really, really surprised if they shifted into like a live service or something like that. I honestly think we're going to go back to some kind of very open play spaces that just partake in the ring and on the ring world, and hopefully that's it. Maybe they tie in some co-op stuff online, but I'm assuming that'll happen. But I'd be very surprised if it ends up being like kind of like a Destiny-esque thing where you have a hub world and you go out and explore the ring. If that's the case, I mean, I won't jump the gun on an opinion. It could be phenomenal and they could get it right, but at the same time, I'd be disappointed that, again, it wasn't a single-player, narrative-driven sci-fi experience, which is something Microsoft get criticized for.
I agree with you. They need it to be that. It has to be. In a sense, it doesn't even have to be the biggest selling game they've ever had. What it has to be is the game that sells the console to people, that sells that generation to people, that sells people on Xbox being there and in your face and competing on games, not just hardware. Because, let's be honest, hardware-wise, they've been knocking it out. Well, again, the sad edition, we'll forget about that. Let's pretend that didn't exist. But other than that, they've been knocking the hardware out of the park. They've been knocking the services out of the park. I mean, my reservations aside on this E3, I do think their services have been phenomenal. And I expect, that's one of the reasons why I was disappointed, I expect their streaming service to be phenomenal. I expect them to get it right. But where they've been having a few missteps is with their games. I don't think anyone would really criticise, would argue with that too much. And they do need something to drop that wows people. They need a game that people go, okay, right, now I know why I need to buy Xbox games. This is what they can do when they really pull their finger out. And I think Halo needs to be that.
Yeah,
and if it's not Halo, they're going to have to produce something else. But I'm hoping it's Halo.
A new IP, yeah. So am I, because that just rolls all that kind of. It's like a full circle experience, isn't it? Like, we went through all these weird rough patches in the middle, but they've come out the other end again with the best, strongest, most powerful Xbox and another fantastic Halo title, which would be a really strange experience 20 years later to do it all again and to have it also wow people and just be pure and good again, which is what the original Xbox was.
Oh God!
But you're right, Joe. Like, that is the Achilles heel of the Xbox. It's not so much that the exclusives themselves is that they haven't got that big that identity hook for the point. The reason you point at, to get the Xbox, they've got heaps of shit, but they haven't got Uncharted. They haven't got a God of War at the moment, and we've said this before. And I'll roll Halo into this as well. Like, the franchises they do have been long in the tooth for some time, and they're not going to draw in new crowds. They're just going to appease the existing fan bases. So hopefully Halo does kind of break those shackles and does be that wow factor. So again, is it
going to be, I know we're going on a bit now because we're like 1 hour and 18 minutes. but so do you think it's going to be like a God of War? Are they going to do a reboot?
Oh, I absolutely think that's going to be the case. I believe her name is Ronnie Boss. She had a insider... I believe that's Ryan McCaffrey's show, an insider chat or something like that, his podcast. She's the lead of 343 Industries, and she basically said, I'll sum up the interview for you in a nutshell. She was very coy about specific details regarding Halo Infinite, obviously. She did say, she went into great depth about why they were building a new engine, et cetera, and that was a lot of groundwork and blah, blah, blah. But the takeaway from that interview was that after the mixed reception they got for Halo 5 and all the criticisms they received for it, she had a discussion with Phil Spencer about the future of Halo. They sat down and they discussed the importance of Halo to the Xbox and Microsoft and where they wanted to take it. And take away from what she said about that what you will, but the fact that they're building a brand new engine and they've given it 2 extra years of development leads me to believe that they're doing right by that franchise. And she stated that the inside word in the studio is that this is a spiritual reboot of the Halo franchise. That says it all for me right there. Like, that's back to the drawing board, back to what made Halo special, back to how it's significant to Xbox. It seems like Phil Spencer and her kind of wanted to get that band back together, right? Getting Halo right, getting the Xbox right, and reunifying them in a sense. So... go check out the episode. It's a really good interview. Anybody listening, if you're interested in Halo, absolutely go check out Ryan McCaffrey's. I believe it's called his Insider podcast series with I think her name is Ronnie.
Okay,
Boss.
I'll check it out. Yeah.
I think her name's definitely Ronnie something. But yeah, fascinating insight into 343 and their mindset now versus what it's been like through developing all these different Halo entries. She discusses the Master Chief Collection and about how it it almost led her to kind of almost up and leave because she was so disappointed in what they'd produced. But yeah, their mindset now and how they're treating Halo, I think, is that's what gives me hope. And then to see that trailer and how it's aesthetically changed a lot, it gives me hope that they have actually recaptured what Halo was. So
cool.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So,
but I'm cautiously optimistic.
So I'm going to pose you one more question relating to Halo, and then I'm going to wrap up. And the question is this. Can you imagine 2020, we get Scarlet Drop, it gets good reviews, it's powerful, it's a beast of a console, and Halo is packed in with some versions, or you can buy it off the shelves or whatever, and it's part of Game Pass as well, because it will be, and it drops. And it does what God of War did with God of War. What they did with God of War. It revitalizes the franchise, and everybody is talking about it and what a brilliant game it is. Can you imagine how that will change the narrative, in relation to Microsoft and Xbox?
That's a tough one. Do I think it's going to reach the same success that God of War did? One, it was Game of the Year. I don't think Halo will be Game of the Year. I'll say that right now. I don't think sci-fi writing, I just don't think it's grounded enough. I think it's going to be a little bit too zany. I don't think it's going to capture people the same way that something God of War did, which is grounded in real mythology of planet Earth, right? Nordic and Greek. I don't think it's going to capture people the same way. Do I think they can pull off a similar caliber spiritual reboot in terms of the craftsmanship that goes into rebooting Halo? The same level of craftsmanship that went into God of War 4. I think they can. I think they absolutely can. But I don't think it will be as big a talking point or kind of that the game that stops all games, right? Like a Naughty Dog title. I don't think it'll be that. I think it'll just be, again, I think it'll appeal to shooter fans and sci-fi fans, but I don't think it's going to capture people the same way that a God of War has or would. I can't exactly put my finger on it, but I just feel like there's something about Halo which I think it is an acquired taste, which I think God of War, to begin with, wasn't as an acquired taste. Or at least what they presented with God of War 4, I don't think it was as acquired taste as something like a sci-fi shooter would be. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think there's some inherent...
I think it's a little bit more niche.
Yeah, I also think there's some inherent issues with the character, not that make it bad or anything, but that would make it difficult to flesh it out and make Master Chief a more... a character that you identify, you can't, put it this way, you can't make Master Chief like you can Kratos. You give Kratos a son and give him different motivations for his...
He has a face.
Exactly. You can't do that with Halo. You can't do that with Master Chief. Master Chief's a bit like Doom Guy in a way. He's a faceless, almost a kind of avatar for the player, So yeah, there's limits there to what you can do with that. And the only way you're going to create a kind of story-based narrative or whatever, you're going to have to do a different game. You could even set it in the Halo universe if you wanted to, but it'd have to be a different type of game. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah. I mean, Kratos is, again, he's a god, but it's just a little bit more relatable and it's grounded in a little bit more reality. Whereas, like you said, Master Chief's a Doom guy who explores a sci-fi story on a ring world in space. Like, it's crazy. It's fucking cooked. I'm sorry if you bleep the swear words out, Joe.
No, that's all right. I swore earlier, so you're fine.
But I mean, I think we saw them try to flesh out the Master Chief and expand, or at least improve the quality of writing and expand and flesh out the universe and Master Chief in Halo 4 and 5. And while I appreciated the story and I found it interesting, ultimately, I don't think the fan base accepted it. There were issues with what they did and how they presented it. So I think they've already tried to do that. So I think this Halo game's kind of going to go the other way that we saw in contrast to God of War, where they really fleshed him out really well. They made him a real person and it was a narrative-driven game. I'm not saying Halo Infinity or Halo 6 won't have a good narrative. I think it will, but I don't think it's going to be, like you said, as fleshed out or grounded as what Kratos was. I don't think the Master Chief's going to do that. I think we're just going to have a fucking awesome sci-fi story, and we're going to be playing as Master Chief again, and we're going back to some classic, basic, nostalgic Halo. That's what I hope. Yep.
And he's badass. So if you can make him really badass, then that's you've sold a lot of people already.
Yeah, I mean, the God of War 4 impressed the world. I think Halo will hopefully impress some new people, but I hope it bloody blows away every Xbox owner and purchaser or anyone that's interested in Game Pass. That's what I hope it does. It's that one little hook to get people over the line. I really can't see it being Game of the Year caliber or Naughty Dog caliber.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's like with movies and stuff. There's certain films that win awards. There's certain games that win awards. Certain types of games that win awards, and some games probably won't. They might win technical awards, but they're not going to win for other things. And I think you're right. I think that's the case with Halo. That doesn't mean it's going to be bad. It just means it fits into a certain niche, and as long as it does that well,
it's a little bit too niche. That's all.
Yeah,
it can be phenomenal in its own right. It can be its own God of War to its own fan base.
Exactly. Okay, anyway, it's getting on for the hour and a half mark because you and I can jaw forever. So I'm going to just ask you for 2 or 3 major pluses that you took away from this, and then I'm going to wrap it up.
Okay. Number 1 plus was the 2 iterations of Game Pass. I'm happy to see uniqueness in those 2 lists and to give me 2 reasons to get both. A reason to get the Xbox for Game Pass and a reason to play Game Pass on PC because the catalogs are unique, and the fact that I can roll it into one subscription. Didn't initially like, now I like it because there's a lot of uniqueness between the 2 lists and there's a good saving to be made there. So I really liked that. Xbox Scarlet was obviously a pretty big highlight. New hardware is exciting. I think I will get the Scarlet because it's being kit and parcel with Halo. Halo being my last plus.
Yeah, I would probably agree with most of those. I won't put Halo in there for me. There were a couple of things that I really liked, specifically, same with you. I love Game Pass. I think they did that brilliantly. I'm not going to say any more about Game Pass because I just think it's perfect. Well, it can always be improved, but yeah, it's brilliant.
Writing's on the wall, yeah.
Otherwise, the hardware again, I would have liked more, but I think, as you say, any new hardware is great. Double-edged sword there. I wanted more. I'm happy that we got something, and I'm stoked. I want the new hardware now. So that was a plus. What else did I find plus? I have to say, I think the thing that really stood out for me, and this is not specifics to the actual hardware or software or anything, just CD Projekt Red. I think Keanu Reeves and all that, it helped sell me on the game for one thing, which is always a good thing. But it was just a light point in the show that made me feel happy and put a smile on my face. So there was that as well. Negatives though, what was the kind of low points for you, or what were the low points for you?
Well, I think definitely the number 1 low point was xCloud. I'm just not really sure what was the point of discussing it if you're not really going to discuss it. Not much at all, to be honest. I mean, we can speculate all we want, but it just seems a little bit off, a little bit strange. It was disappointing that we didn't get some slices of gameplay for Gears of War 5. That's a little bit baffling for me, considering that title is a handful of months away. And again, it's baffling, but I guess that's just not how Microsoft want to present their shows anymore. They just want to have trailer-esque type experiences for all their games. And of course, not seeing Halo was always disappointing because I was under the impression that we were going to get a full reveal for that, so that was disappointing, but I understand why they're probably keeping that under wraps for the time being. I think that's about it. I think those are my only negatives.
Okay. And for me, I agree with you on the streaming. I think that if you're going to mention it, you've got to do something more with it. I don't think they did anywhere near enough to make me interested. And for it to be worse than Google Stadia in relation to streaming, then I took a lot of negatives from Google Stadia. I thought it was really poor. And I think Microsoft this is the thing, I think Microsoft have a lot more to offer and they didn't give it to us. And that's a real disappointment, because they could have blown it out of the water. Even with just a small proportion of what they're capable of, they could have blown Google away, and they didn't. So that was a real negative for me.
Yeah.
The other thing, I've lost my train of thought. I just, as I said to you before, I thought that the timing and pacing of the conference itself kind of let things down a bit. And specifically in relation to that, I think that, we had some of the games were a bit too fast, the stuff with ID Xbox, but I think the one that really struck out for me and was a real disappointment was how they handled Gears. I thought that I should have come away, more excited for Gears, and I came away less excited for Gears. I'm still excited for Gears because it's Gears and I like Gears, but I shouldn't go into a conference and come away less excited than I was before I started, and that's how I was with Gears. It just didn't really do it for me.
Yeah.
So that was that was odd there, and I think some of that is to do with what you're saying about the sizzle reels or whatever, rather than giving us proper gameplay. I know there's limits to what you can do there, but I would like to have seen at least something. And I know people who are there are probably going to be playing it, so they'll get that. But they need to appeal to a bigger audience than just the people who are there in the hall and are there during the conference. They need to appeal to the people who are watching it on YouTube and Mixer and wherever else. So that's that.
Yeah, I actually think Jay and your server had a really interesting idea regarding streaming and xCloud and all that kind of stuff, where you could watch the conference and you could get a hyperlink to go play a game in your browser right then and there.
Oh,
like, to me, that is some futuristic
that
shit.
is fucking.
I love it. I love that
is
idea.
coming, I reckon. I think I hadn't thought about it up till now, but that is something that, Google Stadia is pretty much set up to do that, and I can't imagine xCloud wouldn't do that as well.
So
that's
that's a cool idea. If we get a review, I'd love for it to be like that.
That'd be awesome, wouldn't it? That'd be absolutely awesome. You can jump in and play a snippet of the game.
Everybody, feels like, I don't care what you're doing. Go get your controller, plug it in, click this link, and you're there. Wow, what a way to reveal something.
Yeah, that's coming. I think he's absolutely right, and I agree with both of you. I think that's definitely coming. And if you're confident with your game and you want people to see it, how to sell it, that is the way to do it, isn't it? That would be perfect.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Good work, Jay. I like it. I dig that a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Well done, Jay. And on that note, I'm going to wrap it up. So first things first, obviously, tell us where we can find you.
Well, you'll find me predominantly in the GameCast Discord server. I'm obviously also a participant and relatively active on the GameCast channel. YouTube channel, that is. We obviously have social links across Twitter and all that kind of stuff. Discord's your best bet, though. And in the near future for myself, hopefully putting up some different content on a new channel of mine called Yesterday's Tech. So check out those if that Game Boy stuff takes your interest. Otherwise, Gamecast is predominantly what we do right here. We talk about video games and we podcast a lot. So, yeah.
Cool. And you guys know where to find me, and I'll put a link in. As I said earlier, I'll put links into all of Sully's content, and you can go and check him out, and do as well, because they put out an awful lot of content on loads of different subjects, and all mostly game related. Count sometimes does stuff on Lego, but if you're interested in Lego, check that out. So yeah, check those guys out, and as I say, you know where to find me, and we're done. So we'll speak to you guys in the next one.
Yeah.
Bye.